Okay, welcome everyone to our July webinar. I'm Kate Fassbender. I'm the Ministry Program Manager for the Association of Catholic Mental Health Ministers, and I am grateful that you have joined us today in our series of monthly webinars. This month, our theme is starting a mental health ministry at the parish level. And our guest today, which allow her to speak more about herself and her journey and how she came to mental health ministry, is Barbara Zahner, who is also a board member of the association. So we're grateful for her time today and her expertise, and willing to share that with you as you start your own mental health ministries in your parish and in your community at large. So we will first start today with a prayer. This is a prayer that Barbara shared with me. So I have it on the screen now. So if you just want to read along with me, that would be lovely. Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen. It helps now and then to step back and take the long view. The kingdom is not only beyond our efforts, it is beyond our vision. We accomplish in our lifetime only a fraction of the magnificent enterprise that is God's work. Nothing we do is complete, which is another way of saying that the kingdom always lies beyond us. No statement says all that could be said. No prayer fully expresses our faith. No confession brings perfection. No pastoral visit brings wholeness. No program accomplishes the church's mission. No set of goals and objectives includes everything. That is what we are about. We plant the seeds that one day will grow. We water the seeds already planted, knowing that they hold future promise. We lay foundations that will need further development. We provide yeast that produces effects far beyond our capabilities. We cannot do everything, and there is a sense of liberation in realizing that enables us to do something and to do it well. It may be incomplete, but it is a beginning, a step along the way, an opportunity for the Lord's grace to enter and do the rest. We might never see the end results, but that is a difference between the master builder and the worker. We are workers, not master builders, ministers, not messiahs. We are prophets of a future not our own. So with that, I'll hand it over to Barbara in a minute for our webinar. If at any point you have any questions or tech issues, can't hear us, you can't see the slides, something like that, put it in the chat and I will do my best to stay on top of that. I will also be attempting to share documents and resources that Barbara mentions over the course of our time together in the chat. But if for whatever reason things are not uploading properly or you can't grab it fast enough, I'll also be sending all of these to you after the webinar. So with that, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Kate. And also thank you to Deacon Ed, who is not here. We are confident he's here in spirit. I really want to thank Kate for leading us in prayer and for working with me on this webinar and for creating today's graphics. So again, I am Barbara Zahner of St. Francis of Assisi Parish in the Diocese of San Jose. I'm going to speak for about a half an hour, and then we'll have plenty of time for Q&A. So to begin with, I did not intend to be engaged in mental health ministry. At this stage in my life, I pictured myself in homebound ministry, visiting the ill, or slowly accompanying those with memory loss. And instead, I was plunged in a mental health ministry because of a phone call I received in March 2015 from Lisa Ayala, a therapist, a neighbor, and a cantor in my then parish, Holy Spirit Church. Lisa and her husband, Enrique, parented 3 teenagers. When Lisa called, I was at work as a hospital chaplain, and at that time I was wheeling a patient with mental health conditions back to the unit. We had just returned from praying in a quiet spot in a courtyard. And saying goodbye to the patient, I answered my phone. Sobbing, Lisa told me her eldest child, Christian, Pierre, Ayala, an engineering student at San Diego State University, was missing. As Christian's story came to awful light, we learned that Christian, brilliant, handsome, and full of life, died by suicide. I felt gutted by a cannonball. I sought to console Lisa and her family, yet I felt powerless to comfort such raw, terrifying grief. And I took my fear-wrought self to God. Help me, help me, help me. And then I breathed. I opened my iPhone. Stunned, I read the first email inviting me to a training to facilitate bereavement support groups for those who died, for those whose loved ones died by suicide. I trashed the message. And then it appeared again, and I trashed it. And again, the invitation popped up. And like St. Peter, on the third time that Jesus asked, "Do you love me?" I paid attention. And that invitation came from the American Foundation of Suicide Prevention. And the person sending and resending was Rich Berryessa from Santa Teresa Parish in San Jose. Rich's son, Brian, died from suicide in 2006. And later, Rich said to me, "I wasn't sure if the email was going through to you, so I just kept sending." I took that training on suicide bereavement, and it ranks as one of the best I've ever received on facilitating a group. Tragically, in that same grievous month of Christian's death, 2 other men from our parish also died from suicide. So Kate, if you could put that slide down, that would be great. Thank you. We'll come back to it. Feeling sick at heart, I consulted Bishop P.J. McGraw, then the bishop of the Diocese of San Jose, and I asked Bishop McGraw what could be done. And Bishop McGraw directed me to Chris Miller, a parish youth minister. And due to professional and personal experience, Chris had urged Bishop McGraw and others in the diocese to begin mental health ministry. So from 2015 to 2018, while still working as a hospital chaplain, I voluntarily helped provide 2 parallel tracks of mental health ministry: bereavement support for those grieving the death of a loved one by suicide, and education, advocacy, and accompaniment on the parish level for mental health ministry. Now, in retrospect, from 2015 to 2018, the bereavement support succeeded. As I wearied, another church, not a Catholic parish, began to offer the ministry. However, the parish-based mental health ministry simply floundered. And by the middle of 2018, I was finished with mental health ministry. Perhaps you've had this experience. I retired, my husband and I moved to another parish in another part of town. Chris had also changed direction in his career. And as I packed boxes and emptied decades of memories, I whispered a prayer that echoed a poem by Marge Piercy, "Let me be of use, O Lord." Now, 2 weeks into our new home, I attended daily mass at our new parish, St. Francis of Assisi. Chris had told me about a grant for starting mental health ministries from the Institute for Catholic Mental Health Ministry at the University of San Diego. Tight-lipped, very tight-lipped, I kept the information to myself. "I am finished, Lord." Nevertheless, that still small voice that many of you know well said, "You could at least tell the priest. He doesn't know you. That'll be the end of it. Besides, the deadline is in a week." So I told the priest, Father Michael Sajeko. Turns out he did know me from hospital training as a seminarian. Turns out he was very interested in mental health ministry. He said he would speak to the pastor. To my shock, the pastor, Father Matt Stanley, called me that afternoon. Now, Father Matt and Father Michael both recognized the need for mental health ministry, and they were particularly interested in the well-being of the youth, their parents, and the elders. That's 3 generations. So with ideas from Father Matt and Father Michael, and also Lisa Nakamura, the director of Faith Formation, and Kevin Bernaga, the youth and young adult director, we just crafted a grant for mental health ministry at St. Francis of Assisi Parish. And we called our new ministry 3 Gen Plus, 3 generations plus all others. Now, years 1 and 2, we focused on building the ministry in the parish. And year 3, we plan to replicate mental health ministry in other parishes and dioceses. The terms of the grant specified it could be for staffing or for programs. And since I was the lead and I am a volunteer, we budgeted the funds for programs and not for salaries. Our grant sounded good on paper. However, we struggled with fear. How were we going to implement the goals of 3 Gen Plus? The Catholic Institute for Mental Health Ministry hosted a weekend training in San Diego for all the grantees. So in February 2019, our team of 6 headed off with great hopes. And we returned dashed. One team member resigned from 3 Gen Plus, saying the work was just one rock too many. And another left the staff. 2 held full-time staff positions. They were stretched. And another person spoke about a possible move out of the area. At one particularly bleak team meeting, someone asked, "What would Jesus say?" And Lisa Nakamura answered, "Get in the boat." So, get in the boat with Jesus became our slogan. Since that time, I am struck often with those gospel words. They got in the boat with Jesus. So I encourage you, when your heart is sinking with the scope of this ministry, or what you think is the scope of this ministry, to get in the boat with Jesus. Now, in year 1 of 3 Gen Plus at St. Francis of Assisi, we surveyed the mental health awareness and interest of all parishioners, and in particular, our teens and parents in the faith formation programs. And we sponsored talks from NAMI and screened Angst, a film on coping with teen anxiety. We followed the film with an interactive discussion from mental health professionals that included an adolescent psychiatrist from Kaiser Hospital, 2 school counselors, one a public school and the other one from a Catholic girls' academy. In addition, marriage and family therapist Lisa Ayala, Christian's mom, and Father Michael Sajeko, formerly a college counselor to my surprise, that is before he entered the priesthood, were part of that interactive panel. About 200 people attended the screening of Angst, many of them grandparents. Maybe we can take down the slide, please, Kate. We also held a candlelit evening Taizé prayer service based on excerpts from Hope and Healing, the California Bishop's pastoral letter. So Hope and Healing is addressed to those who suffer from mental illness. And at that prayer service, 2 parishioners spoke of their lived experience with mental illness. And I recall that folks filed in alone to that prayer service, and at the end, they left talking, sharing, and connected. And that Taizé prayer service will be in our resources at the end of this webinar. Now, there at St. Francis of Assisi, our director of Hispanic ministers suggested we create posters for our gathering hall of saints who experience mental illness and/or addiction. And so we just added short bios as well as intercessory prayer on each poster. This is not high tech. One visiting Methodist minister who herself had experienced a mental health condition walked by this display and said, "Wow, you mean you can have a mental illness and still have a halo?" Sadly, with the diagnosis of mental illness, that sense of not good enough runs deep. Now, at the end of that first year of 3Gem Plus, when we had decided we were going to get in the boat with Jesus, we surveyed almost 1,000 parishioners at Mass on mental health ministry awareness. And we did this in English, Spanish, Vietnamese. Now, we use these survey from the Catholic Institute of Mental Health Ministry. And again, all of our services, all of our surveys, the ones for the teens, for the parents, the one that we gave for the initial awareness of mental health ministry, as well as this survey from the Catholic Institute of Mental Health Ministry and the Taizé prayer service, are on the resource page in this webinar. So no need to just scribble and write things down. Our survey was quite revealing, and we had steps to move forward. However, pandemic. In 2020, as you know, and I know, the pandemic closed our church doors. However, the need for mental health ministry increased. Like the rest of the country, we grappled with fear and isolation and uncertainty. I suggested to our pastor, Father Matt, that I write a weekly online parish column for 3Gem Plus Mental Health Ministry. And Father Matt responded, "Go ahead. We have no activities and lots of white space to fill." So in 2020, I wrote 50 plus columns on the intersection of faith, spirituality, and mental health. I received little, almost no feedback. Yet undaunted, I just kept writing. And in the end, I gained clarity and commitment about serving as a mental health minister. It was a great lesson for me about how we just continue to persevere, relying upon that gift from the Holy Spirit of fortitude. In 2021, through the goodness of God and the dedication of Deacon Ed Schoner and grants from the Association of Mental Health Ministers, 7 more parishes of 53 in the Diocese of San Jose launched mental health ministries. And I realized we needed a mental health ministry formation program. And in creating the formation, I drew upon my background as a hospital chaplain and a spiritual director. In another life, I also walked alongside those who are homeless, many of whom have undiagnosed and or untreated mental illness. And then I remember the words of a Methodist bishop who long ago came to a nonprofit where I worked, and that bishop spoke about the heart of ministry. He said, "Just by listening, you have already helped." So Kate, if you can take that down, we're going to come back to that at a later time. So working with Ruth Otten, a licensed marriage and family therapist and a member of St. John Vianney Parish, we designed Listen with the Ears of the Heart, a formation program for mental health ministers. And Listen with the Ears of the Heart is the counsel of St. Benedict to his early monks. Maybe we could share that document about mental health ministers formation from the Diocese of San Jose. So as we're putting up that diocese, you can see that we just set our formation on 4 hopes. One was to infuse all those who participated in the training with a Catholic understanding of mental health ministry with hope and healing. That pastoral letter of the bishops of California on caring for those who suffer from mental illness. And it's addressed to all Catholics and all people of goodwill. Our second hope was that we would connect our cohort members as companions on the journey. And so far we've had 6 cohorts, and that we would increase their confidence as parish-based mental health ministers. And then finally, our hope was to develop confidence as a parish-based mental health minister. So the idea was to rest on that foundational document, which is hope and healing. And then to make sure there was a connection between the cohort members to increase confidence as well as confidence. And we just set 3 very simple goals: stop stigma, start welcoming, and start and step alongside with prayerful support and emotional and practical help. Links to mental health and other community resources. So Kate has sent a note saying that this document right now is not linked. The wonders of technology. We are still connected at the heart. So we will have that in our resources. And I'll just continue on. So we had our hopes that were based upon hope and healing. We had our goals, which was about the importance of stopping stigma and that we would start welcoming and that we would walk alongside people. And then finally, we stressed 5 key practices, and they were welcome the stranger, holy listening, companion on the journey, self-care, and awareness of self and other and the divine. And again, will be documents in the resources. Now, our 8-hour training is provided by Zoom and includes reading and role playings, written reflections, and verbatims. And again, the emphasis is on listening with the ears of our heart. And as in all contemplative practices, this means listening primarily in silence. We stress we are not therapists. We are not clinicians. We do not fix, save, rescue, or set another straight. We are, as we prayed in our opening prayer, ministers, not messiahs. Now, before our first session, each member of the cohort reads Hope and Healing for a theological and pastoral grounding in the call to serve as a mental health minister. And after mental health ministers complete the mandatory 8-hour listen with the ears of the heart formation, we highly recommend other trainings. And this is also in a separate document, and we'll see if with the wonders of technology, if it shows up or not. So there are additional mental health trainings and organizations that we recommend. I just want to say about this document, Hope and Healing, that at St. Francis of Assisi, we did a study session on this. In the study session, the first thing, the document is available in Spanish, English, and as well as Vietnamese. And there also is an excellent study session with it. Often people begin reading this document with great reluctance. And I remember in the study session that we had at St. Francis of Assisi, somebody said his first language is Spanish. He's a teacher, and he said, this document, Hope and Healing, is written clearly. It's not like this lofty pie in the sky stuff we often read. So I highly recommend this. Listen with the ears of the heart. So Kate, is there any hope in getting the additional mental health trainings and organizations that document up? We did it. Okay. So we'll see if maybe we can put that up. Okay. And we'll see it on our screens. This is just, again, you're going to have it in all of your resources. So far, I'm not seeing. I see. So it's there. It's not on the screen. It's in the chat. Is that correct, Kate? Okay. So this is my first webinar like this, so I'm learning a lot. So it looks like if you have that in your chat, and it'll be part of the resources as well. So Kate, are we able to open that on the screen? Or is that asking the impossible? Okay, there. So there's just additional mental health trainings and organizations. And as you can see, they include certainly relying upon NAMI a great deal. If you have NAMI in your area, I highly recommend it. And there also is the course that is an online course, Implementing Catholic Mental Health Ministry from the Catholic Institute for Mental Health Ministry. So that's from the University of Chicago. All of these are excellent. All of these you can receive additional information about through the Association for Catholic Mental Health Ministry. Thanks very much, Kate. We can probably just take that down now. So in 2022, from those initial 8 parishes, we added 3 more, plus the Department of Evangelization of the Diocese of San Jose. And then in addition, in 2022, parishioners from the Diocese of Oakland and the Diocese of Sacramento also participated in our mental health ministers formation, Listen with the Ears of Our Heart. To date, about 60 people are initially trained in listening with the ears of the heart. We plan to have another training in October. And if you're interested, just let Kate know about it. Another one that we find really helpful is done through the county, and it is about suicide, prevention and intervention. It is called Be Sensitive, Be Brave training, and it's throughout our county and it's through other counties as well. I thank Evelyn from the county of Santa Clara County for letting us know about that. So working with these parish-based ministers, I sometimes picture petri dishes or sourdough starter, each growing in their unique soul-nourishing mental health ministry. At St. Francis of Assisi, we just began with a simple survey and a tabling of NAMI resources and county resources to assess interest in mental health awareness and education. And other parishes began with no obligation listening sessions. They invite those who are interested to join a Zoom call on the beginning of mental health ministry. And during that call, the leaders, the facilitators in that call, ask what mental health ministry would look like in that parish. Remember, it's no obligation. So when you answer, there's absolutely no obligation. Maybe we can take down the petri dish, Kate. And others began with awareness presentations such as from NAMI, such as In Our Own Voice, or one for youth, Breaking the Silence. Now, some initiated online prayer and share group, and one started with Grace Alliance for family members. Again, the Grace Alliance is in our resources there. And another formed, she was actually had background from working in Disneyland. So she formed a joint venture with other local parishes, as well as parishes in the Diocese of Orange County, to screen 3 indie flicks films that were aimed at youth and teens and their parents. And those screens were followed by interactive panels. The 3 films are Angst-like and Upstanders. And you may recall in 2019, about 200 joined us at St. Francis of Assisi to see Angst. Well, in 2021, well over 1,000 viewers participated in those screenings. That's in each one of those screenings. Grace abounded. It just shows the power of technology and of working together and taking those skills that we already have, whether you worked in Disneyland or you've had great skills in management, or maybe what your skill is being just a tremendous, and it's a very positive skill, being a tremendous listener. So I just want to say again that in those screenings, despite the fact that they were on Zoom, that grace abounded. For example, in Upstanders, a family speaks of the death by suicide of their son, who was sadly bullied in school and on his athletic team. Father Matt Stanley, pastor of St. Francis of Assisi, served on that interactive online panel. Now, the producer asked Father Matt about the church's stance on death by suicide, and many of you are quite aware that Bishop Dolan and Deacon Ed Schoner have put together 2 excellent books on addressing this topic, death by suicide. But when the producer asked Father Matt about the church's stance on death by suicide, Father Matt responded with just exquisite and profound pastoral care. And the producer, whom I don't know if she's Catholic or not Catholic, but she was visibly moved. And the panel continued for a few more moments, and then the sign-off came. And the producer, who has facilitated many panels on this film, Upstanders, said, "Thank you. I feel as if I've been dipped in a vat of love." Wow. What a wonderful description of being touched by God. And I just want to assure you that you can be God's instrument to dip folks in a vat of love with just very simple starts as a mental health minister. I've mentioned a lot of ideas, but here's some. Just include intercessions in the Sunday liturgies that mention mental health. Write bulletin articles on well-being. Post stories of saints affected by mental illness or addiction. Place in the vestibule the prayer cards that feature saints and saints in the making with prayers for those who suffer from mental illness. And just by the way, the intercessions, the saints, the bulletin articles, and the prayer cards are all available online at no charge from the Association of Catholic Mental Health Ministers. And what's more, you can get those prayer cards in English and Spanish. It's simple, and it's a simple and easy start, an effective start for mental health ministry. Just another quick and simple start is to place information about NAMI in the parish office or in the back of your church. NAMI stands for the National Alliance for Mental Illness. It was started in 1970 by parents of youth and those experiencing mental illness. It goes by the initial NAMI, N-A-M-I. It's a local as well as a state, as well as a national organization. Now you can also purchase care notes from Abbey Press on pertinent topics such as anxiety, depression, holiday blues. Just put those in the back of the church or outside on a kiosk. Now, at Most Holy Trinity Parish in San Jose, the young adults who serve as mental health ministers began with an outdoor remembrance service for those who died by suicide. So there in the asphalt, we named the names and we told the stories. So poignant and so simple. Some mental health ministers just simply returned to the monastic tradition and simply met with and literally walked parish grounds with those who expressed loneliness, sadness, or confusion, or a sense of abandonment. And often those are people who have gone to the pastor, expressed their confusion or bewilderment, and the pastor will connect them then with a mental health minister. Again, I want to just emphasize, so often we get into this ministry because we want to help, that just by listening, you've already helped. Now, one of the finest ways to initiate mental health ministry is for a priest or a deacon to offer a homily or a lay personal reflection on their lived experience of mental illness or mental health challenges. During those early days of the pandemic, I witnessed the power of pastors speaking from their heart about their own experiences of fear, loneliness, and sadness. Bishop Cantu met and still meets twice per month online with our priests, both retired and active in the diocese. Bless him for doing that. Being a priest can be lonely. In one or two of these gatherings, Bishop Cantu arranged for therapists to be part of small group conversations among the priests. All conversations were confidential. Later, two pastors, Father George Arana of Santa Teresa and Father Mark Arnson, then pastor of St. Lucy's, preached on their experience of being listened to. And they urged each of us to listen to each other. So generous listening is a key takeaway of the California Bishop's letter, Hope and Healing. And we may be able to show a quote that's found on page 9 of Hope and Healing. It's called Share the Culture of Encounter. Maybe as Kate's looking for it, it reads like this. The Pope speaks frequently of creating a culture of encounter where we no longer pass by people in a hurry without noticing them or recognizing how they might be struggling or suffering. It's easy to do that with those who suffer from depression or anxiety, addictions or psychological trauma, loneliness or isolation. We Christians have to get to know people, to befriend them, to listen generously to them, to walk with them. This is not because we have all the answers to their problems or can cure all their afflictions, but simply because these encounters, these small acts of love and compassion, understanding and friendship are precisely what people need most. Acts of love can start small with simply praying with people who are afflicted. Prayer is a powerful source of healing and peace. Some parishes are teaching teams of people in their parishes to be available to pray with people. It can make a great difference when we move from praying for people to praying with them. So again, this is found on Hope and Healing on page 9. In one training that I gave the online, we just simply use this code almost as a Lectio Divina. So how to pray with people. Now, Brenda McGuire at St. Simon Parish in Los Altos here in Northern California is an example of another pastor who both have written and spoken of the value of mental health ministry. In addition to drawing upon his own lived experience, both personal and pastoral, Brendan used the continuum of mental health as an illustration of all of us moving from well-being to ill and back again. And the continuum of mental health, you can find that if you Google continuum, it's got 2 U's of mental health. It is not in our resources, but perhaps Kate will be able to find it. And just as in physical health, we are not static. And I would add that in our spiritual health, as St. Ignatius of Loyola, we are not static. In mental and emotional health, we move on a continuum from well and sometimes to ill. Now, Brendan also led a commissioning of mental health ministers at St. Simon Church in Los Altos. And I think you've seen a photo of that commissioning of those mental health ministers. And this commissioning is included on the commissioning ritual is included on the website of the Association of Catholic Mental Health Ministers. And I just encourage you, there we are, to have such a commissioning in your parish or deanery or diocese. And following that commissioning, the ministers organized just an informal conversation with the minister, with everybody in the parish over cookies and coffee in the adjoining parish hall. And while I was part of that conversation, I spoke to a father who confided about his anxieties with his son diagnosed with autism. And I had not thought about autism in mental health ministry. So my eyes and hearts were open to yet another's pain and another areas to attend to in mental health ministry. So what I'm saying in all of this, that if you just simply do what you can with where you are, with what you have, just start with where you are. When I ask other mental health ministers who have engaged in large and small pieces of what they do in mental health ministry, they just said over and over again, begin. This is a picture of Teddy Roosevelt, who had that quote, do what you can, where you are with what you have. So thanks very much, Kate, for the picture of Teddy there. Okay. So as I created this webinar, I wrote to many who are completed the training and listening with the ears of the heart. And I also emailed pastors whose parishes have launched mental health ministries. And I asked them counsel about beginning a mental health ministry. Father Andrew Nguyen, who's a pastor of St. Thomas of Canterbury, emailed a very heartfelt thank you and declined to give advice because he said, I'm still learning myself. And then he added, it'd be good to hear about or learn from and listen to some testimonies from people who experience mental health situations and be open to new learning. And again, just by listening, you've already helped others and ourselves. And Father Brad Mills, who's got a background in social work and is a newly ordained Jesuit, wrote, one, work on support with influential parish staff. And of course, that would include the pastor. 2, be present after masses to interact with people. 3, be aware that resistance to mental health ministry exists due to stigma and other factors. 4, don't be discouraged if one feels like they don't know enough. Oftentimes, what people need most is someone to listen to them and walk with them and remind them they are not alone. That's Richard Rohr's entire year's reflection about we are not alone, huh? And the 5th one is have a clear plan. 1 or 2 meaningful actions or activities is enough. So I think that Father Andrew and Father Brad captured the points about listen and learn, especially from those of us who experience mental health challenges. And that's all of us at some time. And then moving through our fears of not knowing enough, not doing enough, and not being enough. Simply begin with 1 or 2 actions or activities. And this can begin by posting important contact numbers in your bulletin, such as NAMI or suicide prevention, or the new mental health non-emergency helplines 988. Now, Father Brad Mills talked about expect resistance, and I will say this is so true. So sometimes in resistance, God writes straight with crooked lines. So if you remember me trashing that email from Rich Berryessa and finally saying, okay, enough. And as I recall, Deacon Ed desired to begin mental health ministry in his own diocese of Scranton, but for whatever reason, the timing and the will were not there at that time. So instead, Deacon Ed focused beyond Scranton. And here we are today with the Association of Mental Health Ministers. So when you encounter resistance, pray for the person or situation that blocks your way, then just simply ask God to show you an opening elsewhere. The Quakers call this practice way open. Instead of pounding on closed doors, turn around and behold the horizon, way open. Wow. Father Brad urged, be present after masses, especially, and other times as well. So rather than hurrying to the parking lot, move slowly and practice that culture of encounter. You may be surprised by God. Now, sometimes an objection to beginning parish-based mental health ministry is money, and I'm struck often how low budget mental health ministry is. Training is often free. Prayer cards are free. Posting information in the bulletin is free. Intercessions are free, as are homilies, prayer services, vigils, and other liturgical activities. Now, granted, you may have speaker stipends, refreshments, and workbook fees, and perhaps you can ask for a free will offering. If you are not praying for staffing, I think if you budget $1,000 per year, you will be in sound shape. If you start with $100 per year, you're in good shape. If you start with nothing, then you learn to just simply abandon yourself and to trust in God's providence. Now, I know parishes that maintain $2,500 per year is needed. Whatever. If the amount is beyond your parish resources, I suggest you apply for a grant from the Catholic Community Foundation in your diocese. One thing I strongly suggest that, or we have also something in the chat box, maybe offering some help here. One of my goals at St. Francis of Assisi was just to have mental health listed as a line item in the parish budget, and it now is. And I recommend you seek that goal also. If it's listed in the budget, it's real, just in my experience. Maybe we can take down that grant, that particular slide. So another budget item is time. How much time does mental health ministry take? And as I ask this question, I think of St. Augustine, who said something along the lines of, God's time is infinite, but man's time is finite. When Deacon Ed imagined parish-based mental health ministries, he figured a paid diocesan staff person would spend 10 to 15 hours per week on mental health ministry. And I don't know how accurate Deacon Ed's estimate is. I am not a paid diocesan staff person. I volunteer in mental health ministry. And I find that my time serving as a minister ebbs and flows. This webinar took me about 15 hours to prepare. I have no experience with webinars. Meeting with my pastor, Father Matt Stanley, takes 15 minutes per month. We meet every other month for about 30 minutes, and I just prepare an agenda and we plow through. I have experience in working with Father Matt Stanley with designing meetings. So the question to ask is, how much time can you spend as a mental health minister? 1 hour per month? Then set your actions based on the time you have at this minute. Remember, do what you can, where you are, with what you have. So let's see, time, money, volunteers. And recently I gave a workshop at the mental health conference at El Retiro in Los Altos in Northern California with Lori Dusa from Our Lady of Mount Carmel Church in San Diego. And I also have observed Lori with her mental health ministers at a Sunday tabling event after Mass in San Diego. I am simply filled with admiration for Lori, her team, and their engagement as mental health ministers. But for various reasons, the formation of mental health ministers at my parish, St. Francis of Assisi, is not as solid as Lori's team in San Diego. So there are, among those petri dish parishes and mental health ministries, I observe some key components of team formation in volunteers in mental health ministries, and those will be included in our resource page. The last part of those key components, I'm not sure if we can put it up or not, is that we trust that God is with you. So regardless, if your team, you're just simply the sole minister or you've got overflowing hearts and hands, I suggest you do your best and let God do the rest. In the end, it's God's work. One of the things that sometimes troubles up or a question comes, particularly at budget time or whenever, is measurement. Yes, we need measurement. And yet, how do we measure the effectiveness of our work? Fred Rogers, that is the Mr. Rogers fame, asked his wife as he was dying and in the anguish of self-doubt, did we make any difference? Did we do any good? In the end, that judgment is up to God. Now, Peter Drucker, who's a management guru from long ago, said that in nonprofits, and that certainly includes churches, there are two bottom lines, a balanced budget and changed lives. How do we measure changed lives? One measure is anecdotal stories and testimonies. Another one is a survey from the Catholic Institute of Mental Health Ministry. And again, this survey is included in the resources for this webinar. I suggest you give the survey at the same time for 3 years in a row and pay particular attention to questions 8 and 9 about those who are willing to speak with their pastor about something that is weighing them down, or a priest or a deacon or another paid staff person. And also question 9, do you know who the mental health ministers are in their parish? If you do this for 3 years, you'll have a good sense, maybe, about the effectiveness of mental health ministry in your parish. And at the same time, you collect those stories about, well, where mental health ministry has made a difference in the life of someone. So let's see, there's budget, team, time, measurement, and then there's change and resistance. And change is the only constant in life. Pastors change, bishops change, staff change in the parish and diocese, and priorities change, personal and institution. Maybe, Kate, we can take that one down. And as a parish-based mental health ministry, I have experienced all of these changes. And I just found that acceptance of change is the key to my own sanity and well-being. This came straight out of 12-step. I also found that prayer works. And as I keep my eye on the goal and the mission to be the hands and feet of Christ and to listen, as St. Benedict wrote, with the ears of my heart. Also, I want to say something else that St. Benedict wrote. He said, always we begin again. And so we do in parish-based mental health ministry. Always we begin again. There is another prayer by Thomas Keating on the gift of counsel, and I believe you're going to find it in your resources. Father Thomas Keating is a Trappist monk, and he owed his community roots in St. Benedict. And in this reflection on the gift of counsel, Father Keating captures 3 elements that are the ebb and flow and actions that are prompted by the Holy Spirit. I don't know, Kate, if we're able to put that prayer up or not. And if you have that prayer, you will see, looks like you may not have it. So Holy Spirit at work, you'll get it in the resources, that there's an ending. All you have to do is to take the first step. So right now, I invite you to say a prayer, any prayer that speaks to your heart. Be from the Our Father to Jesus' mercy to help me. And then write one step for you to take now as a parish-based mental health ministry. So just write it down now. Put a date on the top. Today is July 26th. Write one step now that you can take as a parish-based mental health minister. Kate and I will be doing it as well. And then just take that written step and put it someplace where you will see it. And when you join us for our next webinar on August 30th, you can just see how you and God partnered in completing that step. I'm going to put this step right now on the calendar. Okay, so on August 30th, you can just check back and see how you and God partnered on completing that step. So I really thank you for joining this webinar on building a parish-based mental health ministry. I bless you for your willingness to respond to the Holy Spirit and be a listening presence in this clamoring and often broken world. And may the peace of the Lord be with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. At this point, if anybody has any questions, feel free to put them either in the Q&A feature or the chat. And now there were some resources that for whatever reason didn't want to link into the chat. So I'll make sure that everything is sent out tomorrow with a recording of this webinar. So you'll have everything that was mentioned today. So we do have one question, and they're wondering if there's a way to access the columns that you wrote, those 50 columns that you wrote. in your parish
Oh
bulletin.
my gosh, surely, that would mean me pulling them out of a file, both a paper file as well as a computer file, taking a look at them. And right, and what I would do then is just simply send them to Kate, to the Association of Catholic Mental Health Ministers, and they would be there. They're just, simply something that is there. And they might give you some ideas for doing some things. Thanks for asking.
Another question came in. When you meet with your pastor, what type of things do you discuss?
That's great. So first thing, I just want to let you know your pastor is not your therapist, and your pastor is not your dad. So it's just important that when you go, in my experience, to be prepared. So I just simply bring the pastor up to date. On our last meeting that we had, we discussed the conference that was in California. And some of you were part of that. Also described a letter that one of the members of St. Francis of Assisi who attended that conference felt inspired to write a letter to the bishop, and just wanted to make sure that so that letter went via the pastor. Just wanted to make sure that the Father Matt was aware of it. Just ask him about anything else that is going on that he thinks would be important for me to know about mental health ministry. I say we meet for no more than a half an hour. It's just really important in my experience to treat this as a business meeting. So thanks for asking. Just jot some things down, give it to the pastor if you can ahead of time. And then I even write on just a half sheet of paper. So we each get a half a sheet of paper so it doesn't look daunting. And most of all, I listen with the ears of my heart to what the pastor has to say. Thanks, great question.
We have two other questions that have come in. The first is, do you think it is important to include professionals like counselors in mental health ministry teams?
I think it's great if you can do that. And there is, I really find that helpful. I just want to state again, though, that this is not therapy and it's not counseling. And so if they're part of the team, and in my experience, it's really excellent to have them be part of the team. You might remember as we put together the training for Listen with the Ears of the Heart, Ruth Alton partnered with me. There is, for those who are therapists and counselors, if they hear something, that they are mandated reporters, and they by their requirements need to report that. So that is something to go over with yourself and with the therapist about what mandated looks like in reporting, looks like in ministry. I think it's excellent to have them be part of the team. Thank you.
Great. The next question is, what is the name of the movies you showed before your panel discussion? How can we access your 8-hour training?
Sure. Okay. So two things. The movies are called Angst, Like, and Upstanders, and they are all available through IndieFlix. And they now have another movie out called Race. And they have a couple other films out as well. There is a fee for renting those films, and that fee will just break your budget. So that reason it was nice to have those parishes all go together on this. But I will just pass that on with that as a caveat. And it's again through IndieFlix. So INDIE and then FLIX, if I remember correctly. And then if you're interested in the training, just let me know. It's going to be in October, and I'll be happy to have you be part of it, or we can arrange another training as well. Yeah, it's just simply done on Zoom. Actually, you can let Kate know. That would probably be better, and then she'll let me know. Yeah, thanks very much. Be honored and pleased to have you. Thank you.
We have one other question that came in. It says, I will be speaking at Mass about our mental health support group we've started with our parish nurse. What would you recommend I speak of in 3 minutes?
I guess, and that isn't that wonderful. I just applaud you. Yay, you're doing it. Hooray, hooray. Okay. So I would think first about what it is that you want to say to attract people. And I don't know what that is, but you might want to think about that. And then simply to say it and then to repeat it. Those are just kind of the common ways of giving a talk. I have found myself, I had a recent experience where I gave a talk at St. Lucy's. I thought it was going to be a reflection, so that would be like following the introduction by the priest. Instead, it turned out to be uh, after communion reflection. So what I had prepared for 10 minutes was now like, slotted for 3 minutes. But I just went ahead and spoke anyway. So, and the reason I'm saying, and people stayed and they applauded and they stayed afterwards with questions. The reason I'm saying this is that if you get started and think, what on earth am I saying or doing? Just continue. Just leave it all up to God. It will work. The Lord will anoint your words. It's not about you.
We have another question that came in and says, what is a process for a person struggling in your parish to be prepared with a mental health minister to listen with the heart? So basically, how do you approach listening with the heart, I think is what.
Right. So we, in the training, we go through 5 steps, and we call them ramps. So it's like getting onto the freeway ramp. If you're from California, there's a lot of getting on, getting off of freeway ramps, and that's when things are at their most challenging time. So the first step of ramps is to reflect. So you can reflect back to the person what you heard.
Mhm.
2, 3, and 4 are much smaller, but the 5th one is silence. So in my experience, the most important thing about listening with the ears of the heart is just simply to maintain silence. And I'll give as an example that during this webinar, I had expressed to Kate great fears because I've never done this before. So I just asked her if she could just, and she said very few words, but she has reflected back by her face, by her gaze, that she's with me. So again, just that sense of being silent and letting the person tell their own story. What I say not to do, and these are the letters, so this is the not to do not be asking questions, do not be playing me too, and do not be praising and encouraging. They get in the way of the other person telling their story. They can be a distraction. So the most important thing that we can do in listening with the ears of our heart is just simply to form a sacred container and let the person speak. Hope that helps. Thank you.
Yeah, so we have time for one more question, but as the days go on, if you think of other questions, feel free to send them our way and I will get them over to Barbara so we can get you answers. So this last question that we'll look at is, do you have a list of referrals other than the ones you showed for parish members asking for mental health challenge help?
So I think the first one that I do have a list of important contacts, which Kate doesn't have. I can send to her because it's just for Santa Clara County. Those referrals are numbers and places to call or to text. The other thing that we have, and it is not well developed in the diocese for various reasons, are referrals to mental health therapists or counselors. What we want to do is to make sure that we're not just information and referral, that people don't just call up and say, hey, I'd like a counselor. We want to make sure there's a relationship with the parish and a connection with the parish, because it's with that connection that's just been found over and over again, that if there's a sense of connection, there's a sense of purpose and there's a sense of meaning in people's lives. It makes a real difference in setting that sense of stability and balance and being affirmed and being seen as a child of God who has worth. However, in answer to your questions, there is a list of important numbers, and I'll be happy to send it to Kate. It is specific for Santa Clara County. And I would recommend that everybody who is at the front desk have a list of important numbers. It's also something that you can put in your church bulletin. Thank you.
So I'll just mention one more thing before we go. I want to make sure that all of you are aware of Click to Pray and the Pope's Worldwide Prayer Network. Starting in June, the Association of Catholic Mental Health Ministers has been working with Click to Pray and the Pope's Worldwide Prayer Network to create a monthly day of prayer for mental health. So every second Monday of the month, we have prayers featured that are connecting the Pope's prayer intention to that for that month and mental health, and how they can be either work together, and how prayer and mental health can be combined. I'm stumbling over my words here. I apologize. But this is a great thing. It's a great way to pray with the Pope while also continuing your prayers for your ministry. It's both an app and a website, clicktopray.org, or Click to Pray in your favorite web or favorite app store, whatever that may be. And it's beautiful because it gives some legitimacy also to our ministry, showing that the Vatican, the Pope's Worldwide Prayer Network, is working with us. And we're not just some people with an idea to have a ministry, but there's a need for us in the church. And that it's just another example of the Holy Spirit moving through the work all of you do in your ministry, be it at the diocesan or the parish level. So I wanted to make sure that all of you are aware of that. It's the second Monday of every month, so you'll be able to find it that way. So I want to thank all of you again for joining us. Thank you, Barbara, for your time and for your beautiful story of mental health ministry at your parish. We'll see you again next month on August 30th for our next webinar, and full details to come will be shared at that moment. So thank you again, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your summer.